Good evening. My name is Michael Rouse, and we're very excited to have you this evening, a part of a very special webinar. Are we pushing our kids too hard, too soon? A real talk on youth sports specialization. We have two experts in the fields, Dr. Alfred Atanda and Dr. Jim Loehr, who will be our experts this evening, talking about their wisdom, but also what they're seeing both in the operating room and on the fields. And both of these experts are amazing individuals with tremendous wisdom and experience. And I'd first like to take a moment just to introduce them each. But before we get started, today's session is a typical webinar format. You can see us, but we cannot see you. You're on mute, but please use the Q&A box to ask any questions that you may have this evening. Share your questions as they arise. We're going to try to answer all questions tonight as time allows. This presentation is being recorded and will be emailed to everyone who RSVP'd after tonight's event. And we're very excited to have the great people from Nemours part of tonight's presentation, beginning with Dr. Alfred Atanda. He's the pediatric orthopedic surgeon from Nemours. And his bio, we're going to introduce you to, as well as Dr. Jim Loehr, world-renowned human performance expert and sports psychologist and co-founder of Peak Tennis. And welcome. Dr. Atanda is a pediatric orthopedic surgeon at Nemours Children's Hospital in Delaware, where he serves as the chief of the Center of Sports Medicine, the chief of clinician experience, and also as an assistant professor of orthopedic surgery at the Kimmel Medical College at Thomas Jefferson University. He's a graduate of University of Penn School of Medicine. He completed his residency at the University of Chicago Medical Center. And Dr. Atanda also completed his fellowships in pediatric orthopedic surgery at Nemours in Delaware, as well as sports medicine surgery at the Rothman Institute at Thomas Jefferson University. Welcome, Dr. Atanda. Our other expert tonight is Dr. Jim Loehr, a mentor and close friend of mine that I've known for over 20 years. Well, I first met him when I was 14 years old at a national tennis championships called the Orange Bowl Tennis Championships, which was an ITF event. He doesn't remember me back then, but I was one of those kids out of 127 other kids who were taking notes under the tent as he was talking about what it is to have a passion about a sport that you love. And I never forgot what he had to say. I met him about 25 years later, 30 years later, and we haven't stopped talking ever since. He is a renowned performance psychologist and author of over 19 books, including the International New York Best Times bestseller, The Power of Full Engagement. His groundbreaking science-based energy management training system has achieved worldwide recognition, has been chronicled in leading publications, including Harvard Business Review, Business Week, Fortune, Newsweek, Time, U.S. News, World Report, Success, Fast Company, and Omni. He has appeared on the NBC Today Show, ABC Nightline, CBS Evening News, CBS Morning News, The Oprah Winfrey Show. Dr. Loehr was the co-founder and chairman of the board of the Human Performance Institute, where over 400,000 plus clients went through the training. The company was eventually sold to J&J. And it's not in his bio, but I know for a fact that he's also coached 17 #1 athletes in the world in 6 different sports. So with having an orthopedic surgeon like Dr. Atanda and Dr. Jim Loehr, we have the best of the best tonight. So welcome, gentlemen.
It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'm sure we'll do all of our best efforts to create value. I know Dr. Atanda will, and I know you will.
Thank you very much. And to kick off tonight's discussion, I saw a clip most recently that I felt that these learning objectives we will accomplish, and the clip will kind of set it up in tonight's discussion. First of all, we want to provide our families with insights from you all on the value of multi-sport upbringing. There's a myth out there, and we want to make sure that we break that myth with the experts talking about it. We also want our experts to provide some medical and psychological data on the dangers of specializing too early and what they're seeing. We also want our families to really realize the actionable strategies to protect their child's passion and well-being on and off the field. And then last but not least, we really want to explore the science of motivation and the profound risks of burnout in young athletes that you both are seeing. We'll share some revealing stories with our families from some professional athletes you've worked with who avoided the specialization trap, but also built healthier, more resilient careers. And I think for all of us, including me, we're in for an amazing discussion. So with that said, I'd like to play a clip that I saw while traveling a few weeks ago that will kind of give an overview of what tonight's discussion will be all about. Please enjoy.
I'm John Erickson in Ashwaubenon, and fields like this one can get busy this time of year. So many young athletes learning about sports. But the number of young athletes who drop out of organized sports altogether by the time they're 13 years old might surprise you.
I started playing basketball when I was 5 years old.
And Lexi Olinsky stuck with it.
There were a lot of us who played in the same programs from the time we were 5 all the way through our senior year of high school.
In that way, Lexi is actually an outlier because according to the book Changing the Game, 70% of young athletes drop out of organized sports by the age of 13. Charles Loehr with Bell & Health is a therapist who specializes in sports. He says part of the trend is the so-called professionalization of youth sports.
Now there's all these leagues, the competition, and for some people, they learn at an early age that this isn't what I want.
An assistant varsity football coach in Menominee, Michigan echoed that idea.
I think a big part of it is that people get too competitive at too young an age, maybe too many travel teams, that kind of stuff. Maybe kids get a little bit burned out.
A report in the journal Pediatrics says the professionalization of youth sports is widely seen as responsible for the intense training and the specializing in a single sport that can lead to physical injury and mental burnout.
So I remember growing up as a competitive hockey player and a tennis player who was nationally ranked, playing when I was maybe 13, my first national tournament, and having a chance to have played other sports each season. But I was playing in a national tournament against a person from Florida who absolutely killed me, didn't get a game, and I was just feeling embarrassed. And realizing that this boy who I just played, this is all he did. And I was a 3-sport athlete in addition to tennis. The next year when I came back, I won my first round, but lost to somebody from California, again, who absolutely smoked me, just, and killed me off the court. And I was starting to see in the different tournaments I was playing that these people from California and Texas and Florida were going to schools where this is all they did was play. And it wasn't until I was 16 or 17 where I was starting to beat these guys. And I couldn't understand why, because they were playing year round and I was this kid only playing seasonally. And to the point where when I beat one of them, I realized I felt like I was unworthy. What just happened? And I realized that not only did they hate the sport that they were playing, but they also had a major surgery, either on their knee, their elbow, or their wrist. And then they hated their parents. And by the time I was 18 and 19, I was hoping to play somebody from California, Texas, or Florida, because I knew that they were coming from these academies and they were already burnt out. And so I want to turn this over to you, Dr. Atanda, just to talk about, take it from here. And then I know Dr. Loehr will have plenty to say about our conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for teeing that up, Michael. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to highlight here, this kind of dovetails nicely with that video that we saw. So, I mean, that video is just a testament at a very high level as to the psychological and emotional impact that our sports that are having on our youth athletes. Most of it is due to us as adults. Obviously, youth sports is big business. So, we try to frame that in the sense that with this particular example, it's a little schematic of a patient that we saw with an elbow fracture. For those of you who are used to looking at elbow x-rays, that's a medial epicondyle fracture. But it just highlights kind of all of the other things that are affecting these kids that have little to do with their actual injury, but everything else that swirls around it. So this kid got hurt. He went to a first urgent care. They did not take an x-ray of his arm. It was large, it was swollen, and they kind of panicked and they sent him to another urgent care. That urgent care actually got an x-ray, which is what you see here. And they said, okay, you have a medial epicondyle fracture. You need urgent surgery. You have to go to the emergency room. So they went to the emergency room on the main line of Philadelphia, outside of Philadelphia, and they were told that, yes, it's an unstable elbow fracture, but we don't treat kids. You have to go somewhere where they treat children. So they go to the DuPont, Nemours, Children's Health, ER, and of course, we being the specialists, we know that that is a fracture. Oftentimes it's treated surgically, oftentimes it's not. Either way, it's not an emergency. So you can imagine this kid went to 4 healthcare institutions. He's being kind of told what is going to happen. He's in pain. He's anxious. His mom feels guilty. She's upset. And all of this is in the background. And it just kind of feeds into the fact that highlights, when you're treating somebody, obviously you can look at their elbow, their arm, their knee, but there's so many other things that affect them and how well they can thrive and develop in the youth athlete ecosystem. If you switch to the next slide, one of the biggest things we talk about is the risks and rewards of sports specialization. So when you talk about Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers, and the 10,000 hour rule, everybody assumes that the more you do something, the better you will be. And I do think that is appropriate for certain things, like learning how to do calculus or play the clarinet or something like that. But things where you can get hurt, obviously, that's actually not ideal. So you can see here from the slides, some of the things that are negative aspects, usually burnout and dropout from sport are the biggest ones that we worry about. Decreased enjoyment, you see increased injury risk there. If you switch to the next slide, you can see we have some rules of thumb, I guess, about sports specialization because, it's not one of these all or nothing things, but I think it has to be taken into a certain context. So we always focus on one team at a time. Just like the Philadelphia Phillies and the Eagles and the Flyers, for those of us in this area, all those guys play on one team. They're not playing on multiple teams, definitely not at the same time. So our kids really shouldn't be doing that. And we try to have them delay specialization. 5 boys when they're about 16, when they're starting to shave, and girls about 14, a couple years after they started their menstrual cycles. You want to have a little bit of maturity before people start specializing. In terms of hours per week, for an example, if you're 13, you shouldn't play more than 13 hours of your organized sport per week. That'll give you a nice rule of thumb. We want people to have 2 days of rest per week. We'll have appropriate recovery time and sleep and hydration in between outings, and no more than 8 months per year of that same sport. So that's about 4 months off theoretically. And as you know, many kids, specifically in baseball, softball, they're playing many, many games, 6, 7 days a week, 10, 11, 12 months out of the year. If you pop to the next slide, we will see here, again, these are some of those myths that specialization is it good? Is it bad? I think the big takeaways here is specialization doesn't guarantee that your child will be a collegiate athlete or a pro athlete in sport. The more your child specializes and the more they do that sport, the only thing you're guaranteeing them is that you're exposing them to potentially more risk, whether it be physical, emotional, or psychological. But there's no data to show that if you play this sport this many hours in this way and you have this amount of instruction, that you will get to X, Y, or Z elite level. Next slide. What we'd like to talk about is the notion of long-term athletic development, or LTAD. So we want people to be active from the day they're born to the day they're no longer with us. It's not about just playing to win and playing to compete. You can see here for children under the age of 18 to 20 or so, we want to make sure that they have just a good active start, good fundamentals, baseline, good foundation. Then they can kind of learn how to train and then train for training's sake and then obviously start to compete. But you can see in that light blue column there, I mean, males 16, females 15. So that's, 10th, 11th grade. But obviously we know kids are specializing and playing in competitive things at 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. So I think that's it for me. But take home message is we want the kids to have fun. We want them to reap the positive benefits of sports. And there's a lot of them out there. But everything has to be centered around the athlete for them to be active and healthy. As opposed to be on the best team and be winning, et cetera, et cetera.
So using this chart, thank you, Dr. Atanda, using this
Sure.
Doc, I think you're seeing across the country leagues and clubs that are starting as young as 6 with travel teams and where the sport is being played year round. And so we'd love for you to begin the conversation on what you're seeing and hearing and sensing out there.
So, I've had a very long career, and I wish I knew at the end of my career, or in the very, very beginning of the learning cycle, that all the things that I had to go through to really get a handle on it. And I would say 50% of the time I've spent with athletes has been with parents, trying to get them to understand the risks, what the opportunities are, and to frame it up right. And I've spent an enormous amount of time with coaches, because coaches also have, a mindset about what they're all about, even though this is, youth sports. This is not professional. The word professionalism in junior or in youth sports, that's the whole word right there. And what that means is you're all in. A professional, this is their life. This is what matters most. Everything centers around this notion that you're going to be a star, that you're going to contribute in amazing ways, that you give up pretty much everything else in your life because you are, quote, a professional, or you're on a professional track. And a lot of these, as you said, Michael, a lot of these young boys and girls are traveling as if they were professionals. And they have all these companies who are providing all kinds of incentives and sponsors, and they feel the pressure. They realize that, hey, I'm getting all this stuff. I've got to return, something for their generosity and their recognizing my potential ability and so forth. And then there's the other side of this, and this is what I really believe for me is the crux. And that is to get the purpose of youth sports right. I always start out with, what do you think the percentage is that your son or daughter is going to become a professional and make a living in professional sports? And you look at that number, it's probably less than 2% for most, even in the more elite leagues. What's the percent probability that they will play Division I in college, or even Division II or III or IV? So then you ask the question, so if they're not going to be professional, that's what a lot of these coaches and teams are all gearing them to become. It's a false promise. What are we doing here? We're setting them up for something that's absolutely not going to happen, except in very, very rare circumstances. Mm-hmm. So what is the purpose? The purpose of youth sport, as far as I'm concerned, it's an extraordinary opportunity to learn life skills and become a more fully functioning, healthy, robust person who can handle sport, who can handle pressure, who kind of follows a lot of their own passions, and really to find ways to learn about life through sport, through interacting with other human beings, through competition, and to understand how to carve out a sense of fun when you're doing hard things, to learn how to get fit, how to take pride in what you do, how to handle winning and losing, how to metabolize, a lot of tough things. You learn resilience. You learn a lot of the lessons that adults never learned and never had the opportunity to learn through sport. But if the goal is professional sports and the professionalization of youth sports becomes dominant, it's all lost.
Yeah.
And I have, if I could go back and show videos, I've worked with young golfers whose parents left their jobs and traveled with them. And they, as you said, Dr. Atanda, they believe that whoever hits the most balls will likely become the best player in the world. And her hands were bloodied with blisters, and she was sore, her wrists. And they said, you've got to go through the pain, because you can become the greatest female golfer in the world. And, you know, when you see this and you see coaches actually getting on board with that kind of thinking. And then there's another dimension, and you mentioned it, Michael. These leagues really have an enormous amount of power because of the money involved. The coaches make money, the leagues make money, and they go after parents saying, if you want to be a good parent, you've got to help them fulfill their dreams. And if you don't do that, you're not a good parent. And I get so upset with all of that because I really believe that achievement is great, but achievement addiction
Right.
is really what the nemesis is here. I was a young baseball player. My father played professional baseball, and every night I would come home and I was a very strong young man. I could throw a baseball because I had a father who knew everything. And every night we would throw at least 30 minutes to an hour. I could throw every conceivable kind of pitch. And by the age of 14, I was pitching, and something happened to my arm, and they call it a dead arm. I was never able to throw I to this day cannot throw a baseball. And now I have a grandson who is so crazy about baseball, and he is all over the United States. I don't know what it costs, but I've tried to intervene. My son played professional tennis. Michael knows him, and you know, there is not a built-in. Now you as a pitcher, you have so many pitches you're allowed to throw at a certain age, and once you have reached that number, if that had been true in at my young age, I would probably have gone much further in baseball. But I picked up a lot of other sports. But it's so interesting how the knowledge that you have just presented, Dr. Atanda, about the risks involved, but the rewards are unbelievable if you wire it up right and understand what the purpose is. It's to help young boys and girls grow up and become stronger, more resilient. And if by chance you become a professional, that's just icing on the cake. But if you become a miserable person with all kinds of injuries, and even if you make professional, and I have worked, as I have talked about several times, and as Michael mentioned, I have people who've gone to the top and they regret all the things that they had to go through because there was no joy in the triumph. There was no real sense of accomplishment after they won the medal, after they won the title. And there's so many examples. And so for me, it's getting the purpose right. And if you get that right, there's a lot of incredible learnings that can occur. And but then you have to look at what is the science telling us about what is too much, what is overtraining, and how do parents use the vehicle of youth sports to facilitate growing great human beings. And the goal is not winning. The goal is actually becoming stronger, learning how to, deal with tough times, getting along with teammates, and becoming a stronger human being in every aspect. That's, for me, that's the differentiator that actually changes the game completely.
Pretty incredible. You both are experts in the rehabilitation of people's bodies and minds. And when we talk about this is really about prehab, trying to prevent, damage from happening. And, there's some really powerful quotes we've seen that have come up, like this one from Scotty Scheffler of what he says about a sport that is so important to him, but how his perspective is really about, like, this is not the be all end all. This is not the most important thing in my life. That's why I wrestle with it. Why is this so important to me? I would much rather be a great father than a great golfer. That's what's more important to me. And I love being able to play this game for a living. It's one of the greatest joys of my life, but does it fill the deepest wants or desires of my life? And I know, Doc, you've worked with people like a Scotty Scheffler, who's #1 in the world in that sport. And some of them don't have that mindset of Scotty. They have this destruct and destroy mindset, which fizzles out. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I think it's real. It's a great quote. I almost fell over when I saw it when it came out. And he has it on video as well. And he is arguably the greatest golfer, maybe outside of Tiger Woods, the greatest golfer in the history of golf so far. He's broken more records, and he came out in a press conference and said, it isn't as fulfilling as it should be. I do it. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, but it's not the essence. It's not who I am. Once you identify yourself as a golfer and your score becomes who you are, and this is what happens with young people. Their value is determined by what their ranking is, by what their at-bat stats are. And pretty soon they realize it's very fragile, and they begin to really resent that every time they go on the field, they're under pressure to create value in terms of who they are as a human being. And that is a very, very dangerous thing. So it's a great quote. And what Scotty has said, I've gotten many great athletes to come to terms with that exact thing, but he said it publicly, which I think is fantastic. I would recommend anyone who wants to really understand this at another level is to read the book Open by Andre Agassi. And it really details what happened to him and how he realized that all the promises made to him, money, joy, fame, all the extrinsic motivators, would bring happiness. He said, they didn't bring happiness at all to me. He didn't find happiness until he really found a different purpose for performing, and that was all of his stardom, all the money he would make. He was going to contribute to making a charter school for kids that would never have an opportunity for education. And his career lit up in a way that was just unbelievable. He became a whole different person, and he found joy in the process because it wasn't about Andre. It was about what Andre could do for others. And that's a huge insight. So it's a great read. I encourage everyone to take a look, particularly if you're a parent.
Doc, I know Scotty Scheffler was a multi-sport athlete, I believe, in football and basketball.
Yes.
But I know that you worked with Andre at a very, very young age, and I don't believe he was a multi-sport athlete. Is that correct?
He was not. His father, Mike Agassi, was one of those dads who really was a pusher. And really, he just didn't understand. He thought the harder you pushed, the more you put pressure on your kids, the more they're going to respond. And so he was out there every day, and Rita and Phil, they just couldn't do it. And he knew he was going to destroy Andre, so he sent him to the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy to, have Nick push him over the edge. And he knew he was a talented. The guy is, Andre was one of the most talented players I ever saw. But, again, he struggled mightily. He hated tennis. He hated everyone around tennis. He hated the fact that he had to play tennis, even though he had this remarkable ability. And it wasn't until he owned it himself and found a way to digest it so that it was his, but it was not about him. It was about what he could do in a much larger sense for the world around him, that he became, that he fell in love with the sport again, and the whole world fell in love with him.
Doc, did you find that with some of the elite athletes you were working with, that you saw a trend of the multi-sport athletes that were in this elite level? Were they a little more balanced in their mindset versus the one sport year-round? Like, Andre was someone who is probably a very small percentage of people who kept going, kept going. He actually had a couple resets as a pro athlete to achieve that greatness. Did you see that coming up? Could you almost like pick it out of like who will have sustainable careers and who will not?
You know, as you and others, Dr. Atanda, I'm sure has seen the same thing. You know, you see talent emerge oftentimes very young. But I served on the United States Tennis Sports Science Committee for 10 years, a decade. And we looked at those who actually endured and had the best chance of success, and how early should one begin to specialize. And we began to realize that you're much better off playing a variety of sports, develop your full athletic potential, enjoy them, have the right environment to compete, and not specialize until maybe 13 or 14 years of age. If that's what you want to do, if that's your passion, then go ahead. But repetitive stress is actually a significant risk factor. And if you always do the same thing, it doesn't develop all of your athletic potential. So you'll see over again, like Scotty, he developed his golf potential much later, and he had all these other sports that he participated in, and it actually gave his body a chance to rest, renew, and grow in different ways. And I'm sure, Dr. Atanda, you have a number of insights around when one should specialize and the dangers involved in becoming a one sport person very early in life. Even though that's what you want to do, it's almost like you've got to have parents who understand that that is not probably in your best long-term interest.
Right. Yeah, I mean, in that vein, you wouldn't sit around, let your kids sit around and eat ice cream all day because they want to, right? If they say they want to
Right.
play a sport 10, 11, 12 months out of the year, you have to pay for it. Somebody's got to drive them there. So you're implicit in this, creating a monster, if you will. But yeah, what I tell my families is like, look, your child will be totally fine if they went in the backyard with 8, 9, 10 of their friends and put cones down and made rules and played whatever game. All of the fanfare and everything that comes along with youth sports and professional sports obviously is driven by adults.
Yeah.
Obviously kids like professional sports. They go to Phillies games and Eagles games and stuff, but they will literally go into the street with no grass and a ball of some sort. They'll make a game and they'll do it for hours and hours and hours. So I think, like you said, I mean, the central focus has to be about what is ultimately going to be what's best for the child, which is going to be have them to be a resilient, gritty, kind of blue collar mentality of like, this obstacle's in front of me. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and this is what I'm going to do about it, or this is what I'm going to try to do about it. You know what I mean? Understanding that failure is a necessary path to being successful.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, we look at people like Michael Jordan and LeBron James and Tiger Woods. Think about how many shots Michael Jordan and LeBron James probably missed throughout their career. Obviously we don't talk about that. We talk about the number of championships and, how many points they've scored,
And he
etc.
was cut from his high school basketball team.
Yeah. And, think of all the other people out there like him who could have been like him, but got cut and they didn't have the appropriate resources to kind of bounce back through that. You know what I mean? Like you said, if it's your identity and then you get cut, then your identity's cut. Now what do you do?
I remember a parent who just came off the wall and I was trying to help him understand the value of sport from a different perspective. And he said, Jim, do you have any idea how much time and energy our family has spent to give my son a chance to be a pro and to earn some money? Do you understand that? Do you understand how much we've invested? Do you think I'm a good investor? I'm not going to invest in something that's not going to get a return. Yes, I expect a return. And at some point, I hope my son will be able to pay me back for all the money that I've invested in this. And he can't give me back all the time, but the least he can do is become an extraordinary example of really professionalism after all that we've done. we deserve a payback. And I
This was a father said this
this was the father.
in front of the child? Was the child?
No, just to
But it
me,
was
when
about
I
the
was
child.
confronting him about, what we've got to do here is understand a different perspective. He saw this as an investment for which a return was really necessary from his perspective, or why would they do it? And he never had any thought about the well-being of the person. For me, it's the person first and the athlete second. Let's make sure the person is fine, and then whatever they want to do athletically, that's great. But the athletic part should not take precedence. I want to know who you are as a person and who you are becoming as a consequence of the sport experience. And if it's not that great, get out.
Doc, I would probably say, given the fact that, I've done this a long time and worked with a lot of parents, there's a high chance, high probability that that parent that you just described, in the way that they probably were speaking to their child, from the tone to the body language, that child 100% interpreted exactly what they told you.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And it's a shame because as parents, we're supposed to be protecting our children.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We set them up with the tools they need to be, law-abiding citizens and functioning adults, but we are there to protect them as they navigate the journey of their life. And we all know as people who've been around that life has a lot of ups, it has a lot of downs, a lot of trials, a lot of tribulations. We shouldn't be exacerbating that by the way that we are interacting and placing a lot of stress. Can you imagine that dad who said that to you? Imagine what he says to his son when nobody's there.
Oh, that's why I went to bat.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can only imagine. And that's day in and day out. That poor kid is probably listening to that, or at least feeling that energy, which isn't good.
And the other thing that coaches often become complicit because that is how they make their salaries.
Right.
Not very many coaches that I've met, and particularly these advanced high-end leagues, they're not thinking about, developing these kids as human beings and really as great human, persons. They're trying to build a case that, hey, your son or daughter has a chance for a professional career. And so they're pushing them with this idea that we got to keep doing this. You need to get to the next level. Yeah, it is expensive. It's 10 to 12 or 20, $30,000 to go to that next level. But if you don't do that as a parent, you're really not a good parent. And the world is saying that that's how you measure your success as a parent, is how high achieving your kids are. And I go right to the heart of that. No, your success as a parent is determined by what kind of human being your son or daughter has become, how well they focus, what kind of relationships they have, their ability to handle the stresses of life, their ability to care about others, to be compassionate, to drive, to give their best effort. And it goes on and on. Those are the things I'm most concerned about. But a lot of coaches get caught up in that because that's how they make their money.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doc, I've definitely seen this entrepreneurial teacher slash coach, with entrepreneur first, then teacher slash coach second, where it's just a new generation of people who see the almighty dollar before helping youth develop. And we've consulted with a couple of D1 schools in their athletic departments to try to help them do audits and are they compliant, and are they developing youth the right way. And I'd probably say out of the different institutions we work with, 70% have their D1 head coaches are more about their summer business than they are of their recruiting and their coaching and developing of their players. And so it's troublesome. And I think, but it's a new generation of coaches that I think families need to be aware of. That back to what you said, Doc, what's the purpose? Is this a false promise that you're giving my child? And you know, what are you setting what can you set my child up for? What can I expect? I think those are really great comments and really important questions for parents to ask.
You know, I wrote a book called The Only Way to Win, and it was I didn't start out in my career as a psychologist specializing in performance with the notion of character, you know, and then I kind of pinched myself. How the heck did I end up in that space? Because we had a database of over almost 400,000 people, and we tracked them for years, and we went into what are the things that really produce an extraordinary human being that can handle all this and actually thrive in a highly competitive environment. And what was the number one predictor is their treatment of other people, their honesty, their integrity, their ability to connect meaningfully with other people and be trusted, be dependent, be dependable and trustworthy, and so forth. And for me, you know, I was called into one of the, I can't mention it obviously, but I was called in to one of the top schools because they were getting into serious D1 schools because all the coaches were involved in kind of, you know, fudging to get better athletes in and to getting kickbacks from parents and so forth. And I use that book that the only way to win is to win with character, and the only way to lose is to lose with character. And they all came out and said, that's great to talk about that, but our jobs are based on our win-loss record. So that's great for you to say that, but the reality is if we don't win, and we've got to win no matter what, we lose our jobs. And there's a societal kind of priority that we want winners. I don't want a loser who has lost a lot but a really great person. And I'm going, well, maybe we ought to rethink that. I'd rather have an extraordinary, I have 3 sons and 7 grandchildren. I do everything I can to make them understand how important it is to be an extraordinary person of great character. That's more important to me than anything that happens on the playing field. And that's the standard of measure I use.
Dr. Atanda, I'm assuming that you're also in touch with the patient, your patients kind of after the surgery. And, you know, I would probably think that mindset is so important of the joy of their sport or to get right back up there. Can you talk to that about, you know, where you're seeing, what suggestions you would have for those besides the prehab, but also the rehab piece of what you're seeing? I mean, here's 2 more quotes from 2 people, top of their sport, who got to the top of the mountain and kind of was like, now what? You know, and I think we're reading about some of these people. Obviously, Michael Phelps went into a tremendous amount of depression in his life and post Olympics, and is, you know, running after trying to be world famous, and he is now. But you know, it was a climb, and Tyson Fury, same thing. You know, it's a void. He was like Agassi. He just put his head down to just try to achieve it, and then now what? So, Doctor, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, you know, athletes, regardless of how good or not good they are at their sport, what they've achieved, they're still just regular people. And I think when we look at our own selves, our own families, our coworkers, colleagues, people we grew up with, all the drama that we all have in our lives, there's no skill or there's no amount of money or there's no role or accolades that shields you from that. Like, these people literally have the same problems you and I do. They just happen to be really, really extraordinarily good at something. So as, you know, for me, dealing with kids in the pediatric space, I want to make sure, you know, at Nemours, everything we do is about whole child health. So when somebody comes to see me because they hurt their knee or their elbow or what have you, I'm also in tune with the dynamics in the room, how they're speaking to their parents. I talk to them about anxiety and depression, bullying at school, death of a family member. because these things all affect our children, probably way more than falling down and breaking your kneecap or something. And I think that often gets overlooked. And, you know, for us in healthcare, as you know, we're not physical athletes, but we're like mental athletes. You know, to become a surgeon or a physician is a tremendous amount of mental will just to get through things. And what we're starting to do in the healthcare space is to understand that it's not just about the surgeon who does the most surgeries or the person who does, inserts the most stents as a cardiologist. We also have to ensure that their experience is appropriate, as well as the patient's experience as well. And I think the same thing could be kind of translated to professional and elite level athletes. Like, yeah, we want them to win. But ultimately, like Dr. Loehr had alluded to, we want them to grow. We want them to thrive. We want them to develop. We want them to go on their own personal and spiritual journeys through their lives and improve upon whatever they were able to do the day before. And I think thinking of it that way is tough. We have to change the culture because, like you said, when coaches don't win enough mid-season or after a tough playoff run, they get fired. And I do understand that. But ultimately, our jobs and our responsibilities, if you're in a position of power or leadership, whether it be children or even adults that you're leading, is that you have to put the people first. And, you know, in order to lead the people, you have to walk amongst them. And in order to walk amongst them, you have to feel what they feel on a day-to-day basis and really understand that they're people just like you are, and you got to do the best that you can do to make sure that there is supported as humanly possible.
That's amazing. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Sure.
We're getting a number of great questions.
Yeah.
Somebody said, I'd love to turn to that if it's possible. We have one from a parent who's asking both Dr. Loehr and Dr. Atanda that if you had a 12-year-old boy who is right now in the state of sport, playing seasonal sports only, really enjoying it, we're staying out of the club or the league, beltway, and we're trying to experiment with as many sports as we can right now. How do we avoid the noise and the pressure that we just talked about tonight, by the way, to stay the path of what we're talking about right now? How do we stay the course?
Yeah, I mean, I can start, Dr. Loehr, if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
That's a tough situation. I think he's only 12, I believe. Sounds like he's in seventh grade or something like that. I always use the analogy of financial health and financial well-being. We always tell people to diversify their revenue streams, their income. You don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket too soon, too early. And the same thing is for a seventh grader who it sounds like he likes what he's doing, right? But you have to ask yourself, well, why would you go to that next level? Why would you then look for a club or this or that? Is it because you want to increase your ability to play at a higher level? You want to kind of get some more skills? Is it because you feel like you're being left out or left behind? Is it because you want to make new friends? I think understanding the rationale behind making that jump is of utmost importance, and make sure it's your son's rationale. I mean, he's only 12. He's a sixth, seventh grader. He's got, however many years ahead of him of playing sports. I typically tell folks not to specialize at the earliest high school, if you're going to do that, but I would still recommend playing multiple sports even when they get to high school.
Great. Dr. Loehr, what do you think?
I completely concur. I think the whole idea that a young child at the age of 12 should be encouraged to kind of follow their passion and to understand what they really want, but it also has to fit into the larger family kind of milieu. That what is it going to cost to go to the next level, and how's it going to affect other kids, maybe your whole family? I think you really have to look at the entire situation and make sure that your children understand there is the number one reason you're participating in sport. We want you to give your best, have a great attitude, really learn how to get along with people. And the issue is fun. we want you to learn how to work hard and have a lot of fun doing it with other people. If you decide, that you'd like to pursue a more elite path, we're going to have to sit down, and I want to know why, just as you suggest, that really, what is the motivation here? Is it you want to get better? You really like to find out how good you can be? Or is it you want to be more famous? You really want to be a professional? You really want to go that track? Way too soon, and we need to have a much better clarity on what are the real intrinsic values of you going to another level, and really check all the boxes, and the whole family has to be involved in that decision. And it's not that you're a bad parent if you don't allow them to do that, if you can't do it financially, because financial pressure often ruins the whole thing, as I mentioned that father. And I know a parent who mortgaged their home and ended up losing their home because the promise was made that their daughter would become a successful playing professional and return it, and it never happened. And the resentment on so many levels, and those are not one-off stories. They actually, parents want to make sure that they give their kids the chance they deserve to follow their dreams, but there has to be a reality check there, and what they really don't know what it involves. And when the fun stops, trouble's not far behind.
We've got two remaining questions that are really fantastic. One is for you, Dr. Atanda, and I'll give Dr. Loehr his also just to think about while Dr. Atanda is speaking about. But Dr. Atanda, your question from one parent is, what's the common injury that is related to sports overuse that you are constantly, having to do surgery on, and what is a good prevention to mitigating that from happening in the clients that you're seeing? And then Dr. Loehr, your toughest client who you had to turn around, and how did you do it? Whoever would like to go first, feel free to.
I think Dr. Atanda is going first.
Yeah, I'll give you some time to chew on that one. No, I mean, for me, obviously, what body parts and extremities are going to get injured are going to be dependent on the sport. But I would say overuse injuries of the upper extremity are probably the most commonly operated on overuse injuries for me. We get a lot of like lower extremity, ankle, knee, and leg stuff, shin splints, things like that. But that would require surgeries. Usually, kids have cartilage breakdown in their elbows if they either throw a lot, so overhead throwing athletes. We see it a lot in our gymnasts. We see it in a lot of our wrestlers because they're bearing weight on their arms. You're not designed to bear weight on your upper extremities. And those surgeries in youngsters are going to be the cartilage issues. And when they get older, like 13, 14, 15, that's when you're getting into Tommy John and such, which are obviously devastating surgeries. So I would say overuse elbow pathology is probably the most commonly operated on for me.
And it sounds like it's a combination of gymnastics and baseball and wrestling, doctor.
And cheerleading, anything where they're tumbling,
Okay.
tumbling or repetitive throwing, usually overhand throwing.
Are you seeing some of that's triggered by kids lifting too early as well?
I mean, it depends how they're lifting. Most upper body, chest press, shoulder press, flies, things like that. They're not going to put too much stress on your elbow, believe it or not. It's mostly when you're bearing weight on your hands and then throwing in that overhead fashion.
And what's the right age for lifting?
It also depends on, are you lifting to bulk or are you lifting just to be cut and fit? If you're trying to, especially for a guy, if you're trying to bulk up and be big, I would wait till you're probably shaving routinely, because that's when you have enough testosterone in your body to generate some of that force into muscle bulk. If you're 7 years old and you're bench pressing 200 pounds 10 times or something, you're just exposing yourself to potential risk. So if you want to bulk up, I think high school and after. If you want to just stay cut and tone and fit, I would recommend body weight stuff. So push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, climbing the rope in gym class, things like that are going to be good to develop a little bit of tone, but it's not going to be so much weight typically unless you're really, really heavy, where you'll have a lot of problems.
Great. Thank you. Okay, doctor. So who was your toughest client and how were you able to turn them around?
So, yeah, I don't want to mention the name, obviously, I can't do that, but I can tell you I've had some really, really challenging cases. And what's interesting in every one of those, the challenges were traceable right back to the parents. That their identity as a human being got completely linked with their results. And, they became very fragile, very, very fragile in every loss, and I had a father who finally got it and fell on his knees and said, I'm begging you to help me overcome what I did to my son, because I'm pretty sure he's going to commit suicide. I put him in a situation where he cannot win, and I worked extremely hard to pull him out. And I can say that he never played the sport again, but he's become a very strong human being. But that was one challenging situation for me, for the father, and for the son. And parents just there's no program generally for parents to get it right. They use their instincts, and oftentimes those instincts are completely flawed. They think that the whole game is about getting their kids to achieve great things. And trust me, I'm in the mental toughness business. People come to me because they want to win more. I'm not a person who is anti-achievement. I want to make sure that they know that, and what we found in our data collection was that the stronger you were as a person, the healthier you were as a person, a whole person, the better chance you would have of genuine, enduring success as an athlete, either amateur athleticism or professional. So for me, it's all about health. I'm in the health business, and so is Dr. Atanda. We are in the health business, even though, I'm a performance psychologist. People think I'm in the winning business. I'm in the winning only in the context of winning in the right way, and that is a very, very delicate path, and we have to make sure that we understand what the end game is all about. Health is the most important direct connection to high performance.
So powerful, those stories that you both have told. And I know I've had parents say to me when it comes to sports development, what role should they play? And I generally relate it to, it's like learning how to ride a bike. Your children are going to have some training wheels on for a certain amount of time. You're going to show them how to do it, and then you're going to let them ride the bike. You're not going to continue to push them. You're not going to continue to keep the training wheels on to make them go faster. You're literally letting them grow riding a bike. And I think we as parents at times are trying to push them, and we're trying to put bigger training wheels on, and we're getting in their way, and we're the problem.
It's so true.
And we're holding
the health, this notion that health ignites performance, and health is physical, it's emotional, it's mental, and it's actually spiritual or character health. And the one I have spent the most time really looking into with a fine-tooth comb and being totally surprised by was the strength of your character and how that connects to enduring success in just about everything in life.
So some final thoughts, Dr. Atanda and Dr. Loehr. This has been, first of all, an extraordinary discussion. I'm really honored to be on here with both of you. Dr. Atanda.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I always just tell my families and my kids to remember that at the end of the day, your average kid, they literally just want protection from their parents and for their parents to be proud of them, no matter whether it's sports or other industries or whatever other walks of life. So I always just try to get the parents to remember that. I mean, at the end of the day, whether they won or lost or became whatever level, they're still going to have a certain view of you as their parent, regardless. They're not going to love you more because you yelled at them more and they won more games. You know what I mean? So let them be kids, let them grow up, let them fall a few times and get kicked in the teeth a little bit, and be there to support them and guide them and give them the tools they need to be a thriving adult in our society.
Great. Thank you. Dr. Loehr.
I would say this, that from all my experiences, sport is maybe one of the most extraordinary gifts you can give to your children, because it provides so many of the things that we want to see as adults, so long as you get it wired up right. You understand why your kids are involved in sport. And it's one of the most important things I always say is that more important than, the competitive victory or the competitive chase is, who are you becoming as a person as a consequence of those pressures? And as a parent, you need to step back and say, do I like who my child is becoming as a consequence of all these forces in sport, team sport, and individual sports? Is this going to help them become a better, more fully functioning person? That should be the prism through which you see everything. And when that happens, everyone wins.
Well, we want to thank everyone, especially Dr. Atanda and Dr. Loehr, for your wisdom and expertise tonight. We want to send our families to nemours.org, and they also have a wonderful website, which is kidshealth.org, for some great tips and wisdom that's available at your fingertips. Obviously, if you have any questions whatsoever, you can email us at esfcamps.com. With any further questions for our two experts, we'll be happy to follow up with you. But we want to thank you and all the great people at Nemours for tonight's presentation. This has been a really wonderful experience, incredible wisdom and knowledge. And thank you for your participation. And again, thank you, Dr. Atanda and Dr. Loehr, for your time and your
Sure.
wisdom. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Thank you.